Everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. This week, I want to talk a little bit about counterfeited or safety equipment that is labeled a certain way but doesn't meet requirements. But first off, I'm going to kind of digress a little bit. I'm going to share a personal story and then a fact that most people maybe don't know. So the personal story is years ago, we went to a specific eye doctor, and the eye doctor had a receptionist, and this receptionist would take people's payments at the front desk using a credit card. But what we didn't realize at the time was she was scanning these credit cards. So she would basically pretend to scan the credit card at the front desk, say it didn't work, go back to the back room and make a copy of the credit card. And in the end, this was a whole crime ring where they were basically reproducing credit cards, but the magnetic strip on the back wouldn't work. And people were taking these credit cards to Nordstrom. They were going and buying some very expensive item in and out real quick. The credit card wouldn't work on the swiper, so they asked the cashier at Nordstrom to basically type it in, and it would work because they had all the credit card information. And then 2 days later, the people would come back and they would return the whatever they bought for cash, no questions asked, because that was a policy at Nordstrom. So it was ironic is that we were caught in this whole crime situation, and we received a call from the United States Secret Service. And I never quite understood why the Secret Service called us for credit card fraud. But here's the interesting fact is President Abraham Lincoln developed the U.S. Secret Service in, let's see, April 14th, 1865. And the intention was to offset counterfeiting of U.S. currency following the Civil War. Apparently, almost 30% of the currency circulating in the United States was counterfeit after the war. So, ironically, the day that President Abraham Lincoln approved the creation of the Secret Service, he was assassinated, and basically from 1865 until President McKinley was assassinated, the U.S. Secret Service sole mission was basically to offset counterfeiting. And then after the assassination of President McKinley, the U.S. Secret Service took over protection of the president. So very interesting stuff. But the fact that 1/3 of the currency in the United States was counterfeit is just absolutely beyond me. But it got me thinking a little bit about safety equipment and things I've seen in the past. And I know that I've told companies, look, all this fall protection equipment needs to be replaced because none of this fall protection equipment meets ANSI standards. And I've come across this in so many different areas. And a really good example, maybe not so much counterfeit, but labeling was during COVID. The government told us don't go out and buy up all the N95 rated disposable respirators because our healthcare professionals need them. So we had this issue where we were being told, hey, wear respiratory protection, but at the same time, there wasn't a supply of it. So we started to see mass production of product coming in from primarily China and some other countries, and you saw labeling KN. So the KN labeling indicated that it wasn't ANSI or NIOSH approved. The N is NIOSH. Actually, if I digress yet again, for disposable filtering face piece respirators, there's an N, R, and P rating, non-oil based particulate, oil and non-oil based, restricted to a shift or 8 hours, and then your P rating, which is particulates that are either oil or non-oil based. And then the efficiency ratings were 95, 97, and 99.99, or was it 95, 99, and 100? Anyways, P100, oil or non-oil based particulate, 100% efficient. We also call that HEPA. So during COVID, we saw these KN95 respirators coming out, and we started seeing them being worn in the workplace. And the reality is the KN indicates that they were manufactured to a NIOSH ANSI spec, but that they weren't tested against it because they wanted to release these things in mass quickly so people had something to wear. But in the workplace, we should be using N95 or P100 rated equipment. And again, a lot of these products migrated their way into the workplace, even though that wasn't the intention. Another really good example would be eye safety glasses, eyewear. And an eye protection is built to meet a specification by ANSI, which is the Z87 standard. And that Z87 standard ensures a certain performance criteria, which is a testing of a ball bearing being shot at a lens and the lens not shattering. And ultimately, I can't count how many times I've been out on a job site and somebody's wearing a pair of some kind of a sunglass that's not ANSI approved. And also, people buying safety glasses, cheap safety glasses from some online catalog, maybe I don't want to name names of companies, but catalog companies that make really inexpensive stuff, and they're releasing this equipment out into the workplace, and it doesn't meet that ANSI performance standard. Therefore, if somebody needed that eye protection to protect them against an actual object coming at them, it may not protect them. And then, finally, the big one that I've seen so much of is fall protection equipment in the workplace. There's a lot of stuff that comes in that is not ANSI approved to be used in the United States. Now, if you look at labeling on fall protection equipment, I think other than maybe a ladder, there's more labeling on fall protection equipment than maybe anything else out there. You'll see your snap hooks, Pelican hooks, large rebar type hooks, small snap hooks. All those hooks are going to be labeled and rated. And then you're going to find a label on the device that should say ANSI Z359. If it doesn't, if it says something like OSHA approved or OSHA certified, then right away you got a red flag, because OSHA doesn't certify or approve any of this equipment. This equipment is manufactured according to a standard, which is the primary standard ANSI Z359. And if it doesn't meet that performance criteria and it's not tested to that performance criteria, then for the most part, it's not approved to be used in the United States. I find stuff that's come over from Europe that doesn't necessarily meet ANSI, or the label doesn't indicate it meets ANSI. And I've seen a lot of stuff out there that says it's inexpensive. You find it, on a lot of residential sites, but it says OSHA approved or OSHA certified fall protection. And anytime I come across that, I basically tell the company, look, you need to replace this. You need to go to a reputable source. You need to buy a reputable brand of equipment that's labeled ANSI and is tested to ANSI, and make sure you're protecting your people properly. It's really easy for us to think that we're doing the right thing, providing the right equipment. And in reality, we're providing counterfeit equipment out there. So hopefully that's helpful. Hope that's an interesting little stat on the Secret Service, and we'll see you next Wednesday.